Line's good.
Never on.
Whoa.
Hard. Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
Got hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham Scott, alongside, as always, hello, Scott.
Hey, Sean.
How you doing? It's a Sunday night.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I felt, a little, like I didn't want to interact with people today.
That's fair.
And it was a good thing because there was some good curling on TV all day.
Yeah, here in the nation's capital, it was a bright, sunny day, but it was also very cold. The high in -10 or something like that. So a perfect day to sit inside and watch no less, Scott, than 12 hours of curling coverage with our friends at Sportsnet.
Yeah, non-stop. I hope they're all getting paid overtime over there.
Yeah, well, actually, Andrew Stokely, who's a sound guy there at Sportsnet, he was doing the Manitoba games. And so he was up early with that game starting at 8:30 local time there in Winnipeg. And he said after the final he had to get a flight to Toronto because he's working the Raptor game tomorrow night, which is on Sportsnet.
Holy cow. No rest for the wicked, eh? Or...
No, so a long day for him, and with a flight, and then hopefully all goes well tomorrow down in Toronto. But Scott, let's start with Manitoba, because between the two provinces today, Manitoba, Alberta, rounding out the Brier field, Manitoba was, I feel it's not a stretch to say that it was far less entertaining. So let's start this morning. Sean Grassy, Mike McEwen in the semifinal game, and it was just a case of, I don't mean this to sound disrespectful at all, but some people might take it as disrespectful. But Sean Grassy and his team they looked in a lot of ends almost like a club team. Like they were making sort of half shots, rollouts when you couldn't afford rollouts, the sort of things that I would expect to see, at a Thursday night, high level, maybe even club game. But that's sort of the feel it got, that even though the score was close for a lot of the game, it didn't really feel like Sean Grassy had a legitimate chance to win at any point in that game this morning. Yeah,
I agree with you. That's exactly what I was thinking as you were just saying that there, that I think he's going to say club. And they're quite a good team. Sean Grassy has, he's always in the mix there at Manitoba provincials. Yeah. But yeah, even the way they were sliding seemed to me like they were maybe not used to playing at 8:30 in the morning, which fair enough. Who is?
Yeah.
But it seemed like they sort of hit their snooze button a little too much this morning, and against a team like Mike McEwen, you can't really do that. And it was pretty much a walkover.
Yeah, I mean, Mike McEwen gets the single, or gets forced in the second, gets the steal in the third. Sean Grassy makes a couple really nice shots in the fourth end to get the deuce, and gives it right back in the fifth. And that was pretty much the end of the game, really, at that point. And you could even sense that Jeff Stoughton didn't think that Sean Grassy had a chance at that point. Mike Harris certainly didn't think that Sean Grassy had a point or had a chance after that point. And yeah, it was just a game where the McEwen team didn't play great, but they were better. Just eye test, and I the stats certainly bear that out too. But just eye test, certainly a much better game for Mike McEwen and his team than Sean Grassy.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So let's move then to the final between Jason Gunnlaugson, who beat Mike McEwen in, they called it the 1-1 game, which is like, okay, the equivalent of a 1-2 game in a page system. On a side note, I don't know which system I like less, is this new Manitoba one versus the new Alberta one, which we'll talk about. To play a double elimination to get rid of 24 teams, to have those 8 teams play another double elimination to get into a page playoff. I don't think I was thrilled with that, but whatever.
It's a lot, right? Like it's a lot of games and a lot of do you need 24 teams at provincials? A likely no.
Yeah.
But hey,
it is what it is. So Jason Gunnlaugson didn't play this morning. They got to sit and watch. Coming into this game, they get the hammer because they won that 1-1 game, and I don't know, man. This was a tough watch. This was a tough watch for me. Like, it just all the way through. Come out. Gunnar gets forced in the second. Then the second end gets a steal of 2 and a steal of 1 in the fourth to go up 4-0. And this was what we saw a lot of last year at the Brier with Mike McEwen's team. Not great energy, not great body language. Jeff Stoughton certainly talked about it a lot on the broadcast of, at one point, Colin Hodgson said on one side of the sheet, well, that sheet is done, or that side's done. And Jeff Stoughton basically said, you can't play like that, right? It's the first half of the game, and if you think you can't play one side of the sheet, you have no chance of winning.
Yeah.
And it was, I sort of thought in my head, maybe I could tweet back at Stokely to see if I could just get them to turn their mics off. But I found it to be a legitimately difficult watch. What did you think?
Sean, it's like we were watching all day together, but we weren't. I think Mike McEwen is got to be the king of bad body language. And if you just watch him when he gets down like that, you have to think there's no chance. I mean,
yeah,
they came back and scored a 3 in the fifth end.
Yep.
They're only down 1, right? But but the looks on their faces and the way that they were playing was like, oh, poor us. We've, suffered the greatest of injustices because we can't figure out draw weight. Like, they didn't have a chance, right?
No, it certainly didn't seem like they did. The thing, though, is that Jason Gunnlaugson, he talked about this in an interview they did, that they're into the analytics and figuring out what is the best strategy, and he talked that has led to some ugly line scores for them. Mm-hmm. And when you get to that fifth end, they were still throwing guards. They were not playing defensively at all. They were sort of going all in, which lets Mike McEwen back into the game. And in the second half of the game, the score in the second half was 3-2 for Gunnlaugson, but I think Mike McEwen's team played better in the second half than Gunnlauson's team.
Yeah, for sure. And McEwen has an open draw for 2 in the 8th. Comes up 15 feet light.
He doesn't. Yeah, he just has to hit the paint. And he's not even close.
Not even close. And Semigulski and Hodgson are good sweepers.
Yeah.
There's no way you should miss a shot by that much. But I sort of think that side was in his head the whole game.
Yeah.
And once that happens and Gunnar gets a pretty good 2 in 9, it's game over. And yeah, just like the way he slumps his shoulders, he's got his broom over his shoulder, like, oh boy, this is tough. You're not inspired, right?
No, you're certainly not. And it's new with him too. Nobody's ever going to accuse BJ Neufeld of being a super energetic guy out there on the ice, but that relationship that they had, that chemistry on the ice, it to this point, it's the second year, right, or third year, whatever it is. It's too soon to say that this is untenable, but at this point, after watching this game, after watching what happened at the Brier last year, they need to figure something out on those team dynamics to put them into a better position to win games.
Yeah, and it's something that Mike McEwen has talked about with going back to his old team there, that hurdle of getting to the Brier they could never quite cross for a long time.
Yeah.
And they did work with sports psychologists and coaches with more of a team dynamic background, to try and help that stuff because it can hurt a team. And Sean, me, I'm pretty bad at body language too. And it's part of the reason I stopped skipping back, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, was because if I got frustrated down at the other end of the ice, it really came through.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things where I know they've experimented with Reed calling the game, with Mike calling the game. They seem to have settled into something that's working for them this year. And as we'll discuss, they're going to get a chance to be in the Brier as the wildcard team. But they need to really look at themselves in the mirror before they go to that game and say, what do we need to do to be successful?
Yeah, and it's one of these things too. I think Sam Migalski also doesn't have great body language. There was at one point where, the two sweepers are talking to each other a lot as they go down, but it's not just about weight. They're also talking to each other about line, which I think can be a little problematic at times. And there was at one point where Colin was sweeping and Derek was telling him to sweep, and Reed Carruthers just goes, "Derek, it's fine." Like it's those sorts of little things that you really pick up on. And I also noticed with Colin Hodgson, he's a fan of coming down a lot. He's the sort of person who, or sort of player that, when you're on clock's fine, do what you want. But at the club level, I would not want to play against somebody like Colin Hodgson. But, he has a lot of input. And, we saw last year at the Brier where McEwen made that great shot in off or angle run on a corner that he saw and nobody else saw. Russ didn't see it, right? The only person in the building who really saw that shot was Colin Hodgson. So he has a lot to contribute. He's a really good player. But there were times where his uncertainty with the ice seemed he was sort of projecting that on the rest of the team. And then at one point, it was late in the game, Mike comes down and says, "All right, I think this will work." And Colin says, "Well, you know better than I." And I was like, "Well, we just have 2 hours of tape that seems to indicate that you don't actually think that." So it's just there's something slightly off about this team. And it's interesting, Scott, because they're still really, really good.
Really good. Yeah.
I think they were certainly the favorite going into Manitoba. We'll talk about the wildcard game. I think they're going to be favored to win that game. I certainly would put them as the favorites in that game. And if they get in the field, they can win. They're good enough to do that. But it reminds me a little bit of Brad Jacobs' team after the Olympics, where really talented and having pretty good results. They haven't had, of course, the heights that Brad Jacobs had even after the Olympics, right? He made a couple of Brier finals. But there was just something off about the dynamic, and they couldn't quite capture it again. And that's the vibe that I currently get from this McEwen team.
Yeah, that's not a bad comparison for sure. Derek was it seemed to me upset a few times with line calls,
yes.
Where he was like, "Oh, I could have made the shot," and I also know that feeling really well. And as far as Colin goes, yeah, he knows a lot. He's got a lot to offer. Sometimes you would rather just Mike and Reed talk it out and get it together. But sort of side note, all credit to Colin Hodgson after the game. When he's shaking hands with the other team, He said, "Congratulations, guys. You really deserve it. I'm really happy for you." So, ultimate sportsman, if you will, in Colin Hodgson. So good on him for that.
Yeah, so let's talk about the guys who deserve it. Jason Gunnlaugson, who they said on the broadcast played in his first Manitoba final when he was or in 2006, which sounds crazy to me, but he was, of course, in that the Roar of the Rings that he made it into in 2009. That's sort of when he burst onto the scene. There in I can't remember where that was held. I want to say Edmonton, but I don't know if that's right. So he's been around for a while. First time winning Manitoba. The thing that I noticed, Scott, in the second half of the game that they weren't quite doing in the first half was Gunnar was relying a lot on the heavyweight. And, I think one of the greatest things of Jason Gunnlaugsson's career in terms of meme ability is when he was playing mixed about 7-8 years ago, and the two women who are sweeping for him are running and can't catch up to the rock. Like he can whip it. And it seemed like in the second half they were letting rocks hang around with Jason just sort of saying and even just being like, we can just get rid of them. And that got him into a bit of trouble in the fifth end where he was outside and rolled out. Almost bit him in the 8th end too, but McEwen, as we talked about, comes up light on that draw. So, sometimes it felt like, and Stoughton talked about this, where, a little more prudent in the game calling would probably be a little bit better on your strategy, but he is so confident that he can just Hulk smash things to go away, which he can. But over the course of a week against the best teams in the country, I got to be honest, if Mike McEwen is in the field, I kind of like his chances more than Gunnlaugsson's, even though Gunnlaugson is the Manitoba champion.
I believe that's what I think too. I think for sure. With Gunnlaugson's first time there, he's obviously no stranger to the big events, but it's different, right? Like people have told us, it's sort of different wearing the bison on your back and having that target. Like when Chelsea Carey got there in 2014, she had a really good run, but the field was a little bit weaker for the 2014 Scotties. So, we'll see what happens, but I gotta believe that I agree that Mike McEwen would be favored.
Yeah, but all credit to Jason Gunnlaugson. Really cool story. Great for him to finally get one. Curling junkie, as he talked about. So it'll be a lot of fun to see him there. I worry about his vocal cords. A lot of panic calls in this game between both teams. But Gunnar, he can't get through 8 days of that.
Yeah,
there's no way.
It would be he's gonna have to drink a lot of tea.
Yeah,
maybe bring some lozenges.
Yeah, if that is the decibel level that he is going to go to the Brier with, it's going to be a Russ Howard situation by Tuesday.
Likely,
at the latest.
Yeah.
If you remember back in the 90s when Russ Howard, his voice would be gone by Monday. So hopefully the games that they're on TV, they're a little calmer, a little less panicky. The other big story, of course, from this game, Adam Casey. Ryan Fry gets his 4th province. Adam Casey says, not so fast, man. So Adam Casey now will be representing Manitoba after previously representing Newfoundland, Labrador, Prince Edward Island, and Saskatchewan. So he is getting some great geographic diversity.
Yeah, and he played in Ontario last year, right? They didn't.
Did he?
They didn't make the finals, but I believe he played with. I'm blanking right now, but I think he played in Ontario. So, have curling shoes will travel, kind of thing. But congratulations to him. Pretty exciting, and I'm pretty excited for Alex Forrest too. First time to go. Good teams, good players. So something different,
Yeah, seems like good guys. A lot of fun to watch. When Gunnlaugson does throw that high hard one, it's great to see. It's different. I mean, I get a little tired of the Hulk smash sort of the men's game at times, but Gunnar's is a little different.
And 4-second peels are always fun.
Yeah,
Sean. But before we move on, you were right. 2009 in Edmonton.
Okay, off the top of my head too.
And Jason Gunnlaugson comes through the Seaside and beat Mike McEwen in the pre-trials to get his berth in the Olympic trials. So a little bit of a rematch there today.
Yeah.
Gunnar did go 0-7 in the trials.
Yes, which they took. I don't know why I remember this as vividly as I do, but there was a moment in the final where Gunnlaugsson's team was in the crowd, and they showed the 4 of them on TSN did, and it was on the screen in the building, and it said Team Gunnlaugson went 0-7 this week, and they just started laughing. They thought that was the funniest thing. And at the trials here in Ottawa in 2017, of course, one of the greatest things ever. Him coaching Brendan Bottcher and saying, we're tied now. We score, they score, we score, they score, we score, then we win. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So it'll be a lot of fun to see them in Kingston. Mike McEwen, of course, will be going to Kingston as well. We'll talk about why he was going in a little bit, but let's shift our attention, Scott, over to what I think was a way more entertaining pair of games out there in Alberta. Let's start with the semifinal. Ted Appelman playing against Brendan Bottcher, a rematch of last year's semifinal as well. And this time, Brendan Bottcher comes out on top in, I think that this was the game of the day.
Oh yeah, and I don't think it was even close, for the game of the day. Both teams played really, really well. Everyone was making shots. I think at the break, everyone was 90% or more. So yeah, overall a really fun game to watch. What did you think, Sean, was the turning point of the game, or was there one?
It's hard to say that there was one. I think
shot.
Well, I mean, it wins the game.
Yeah. It reminds me of when, sometimes on TSN they'll do like, oh, this was the shot, the TSN turning point, and it was just the shot that won them the game.
Won the game, yeah.
Or like in a hockey game, it's like, oh, that goal they scored to go up by 1.
Yeah,
that was the turning point. Okay.
Yeah, but no, I think it was
playing well.
Everyone played really well. I think though Darren Moulding would get my MVP in this game. He really played well. Did outcurl Nathan Connolly, and Ted Appelman was put in a couple of tough spots. Like in that first end, he has to draw full 4, maybe a piece of the button to score. And of course, does it, but. The Bottcher team was putting pressure on Ted Appelman, especially in the first half of that game. And, Ted had to really come through and make some big shots for his team so that they didn't give up any steals. And you just see it in the Bottcher gets 3 forces. Appelman's only able to get 1 deuce, and Bottcher gets the 4 twos. So it just really is that when you look at that line score, is emblematic of Brendan Bottcher's team just being on the right side of the inch all day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. They definitely were. They were the favorite going in, right? So you're not really surprised by it, but yeah, when they get to give 1, get 2, you're expecting to win the game at that point.
Yeah,
I actually went out to run a little errand. I think after the 4th end, so I didn't see the 5th. I came back and was like, oh, they got a deuce. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, just a tremendous game for Brendan Bottcher and his team there. All credit to them, and all credit to Ted Appelman. That's 2 really good runs, back-to-back years here at the Boston Pizza Cup.
Yeah,
out there in Alberta.
A little heartbreaking, after doing so well. But his consolation prize was winning the World Championship last year as the 5th on Team Kevin Cooley.
That's right.
Not bad.
Yeah, you'll definitely take that. But you sort of heard him at the end of the game, too. He makes a really good shot in his last in the 10th that forces Brendan Bottcher to make his. And, he said, we played well.
Yeah.
And they certainly did. So Brendan Bottcher gets that win 8-5. Then he will play Karsten Sturme in the final. Karsten Sturme beat Ted Appelman in the 1-2 game yesterday. Very rested, ready to go. The University of Alberta team, and this game wasn't bad at all. I don't think it was quite as good as the Appelman Bottcher game, but it was a really good game.
It seemed to me like Bottcher was really in control of the game the whole time until the last 3 ends.
Yeah.
Right? I thought, okay, they're definitely going to win. I almost texted you to say, hey, can we record a little bit early, knowing that Bottcher's going to win? But then it sort of, they mixed it up, got a few rocks in play, got a couple misses out of the Bottcher team.
Yep.
And we're able to put the pressure on, making Brendan throw his last to the full 4-foot.
Yeah, so there's a couple points in this game that I was really curious about. The score is 2-2 in the 4th end. Karsten Sturme gets forced in the first, has to make a nice shot, and then force back, force in the 3rd. So it's 2-1. Excuse me, I got the score wrong. So it's Brendan Bottcher gets 2 in the 4th. So he's up 3-2.
Yeah.
Playing the 5th end. And he has two in the house, just a wall of guards. Basically, if you're looking at the overhead screen, the 4-foot line, just a little to the right of the 4-foot line on the right of the house, everything to the left boards basically is covered. Right?
Yeah, there's no wide out turn.
Yeah, a couple small holes. You can't go wide out turn, maybe go through a hole, and he has to draw full 8-foot, which on its own, for people of this caliber, is not that difficult, but he has to navigate a hole. And what I was thinking, Scott, was could he not go wide in turn side to go around what were essentially corner guards? And if he buries it perfectly, not that he has to bury, but just so you get a sense of the line, if he puts it buried behind those two stones, he's almost touching the 4-foot.
Yeah.
Like just to my eye, I thought that was an easier line. But again, for them to get to the button, they were putting outside 12-foot. So maybe it wasn't even there.
Yeah, it seemed to me like it would be more of a guess, especially on the speed for them going way out to the boards. And they seemed comfortable enough with the hole. Turns out it was a bit tighter than they thought, and they weren't able to do it. I wondered if he maybe wanted to play. On his first, he played a hit through the port, sort of a hack waiter.
Yeah, very nice shot.
And then Bottcher comes back and also goes through the hole. And Bottcher's stone rolled far enough that he didn't have the same hole to come through, right? On Sturmay's last.
Well, the Bottcher shooter on that one rolled out.
Oh, it rolled out.
Yeah, so he was sitting two on the other side. The shooter, because he threw harder weight, but
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you couldn't. The way that hole was, sort of on the right side it was two stones, on the left side it was one. The way that ice was curling, I don't think you could get through there with a draw.
Yeah, I think you're right. So I think they played the only one where they were confident in the speed and thought that it was big enough to get through.
Yeah, and they didn't.
They didn't, and
that's a really hard shot.
And that's probably the turning point of the game. At that point, I thought, okay, well, Bottcher's running away with this, right? They're too good.
Yeah.
But credit to Sturmay, bounces back and gets their deuce in 6 coming out after the break. And then they got a steal in 9 to tie it. And to be honest, I don't think Brendan Bottcher was like all that worried about giving that steal.
No, you heard Darren Moulding as they measured say, I think it's yellow. I don't even know if I want it to be red.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Which, if that's the case, you can just kick him.
Oh well, the official was there.
Right, but if that's actually how you feel, you can just be like, well, yellow, okay, go. Right, yeah. And you can just kick him away. Like,
but that was it. He wasn't sure.
Yeah, but again, if you don't want the point, just kick him. You don't have to. If it's close enough to measure, and you say to the other team, well, it's yellow, and kick them, well, then okay.
Yeah.
I do that frequently. Measuring, I don't like to measure.
Yeah, we ain't got time for this.
Wasting my time. We got cold. But that was an interesting end too, because sort of everything builds up there in the back 4-foot, and they play freezes back and forth with Carson Sturmay playing the out-turn side, Brendan Bottcher playing the in-turn side, and they sort of ping-ponged as to who was shot until Carson Sturmay's last one, where he makes an amazing shot, followed by, even though it didn't score, maybe even a better shot by Brendan Bottcher on like a hack weight through the whole little raise. Like, just, that was great curling.
Oh yeah, and I think you're right. It might have even been a better shot, but he didn't score with it. It was some incredible shot making, and it seemed like the ones leading up to maybe like the third stones and the first skips rocks were just like a little bit too heavy.
Yeah.
And
Darren Moulding's
just behind the tee line.
Yeah, Darren Moulding's last one. That was probably the shot that set up the steal. He's heavy and sort of rolls off that sort of stack that had built up, and that's the shot that, if you're Brendan Bottcher, you really needed to be able to score.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Given that Carson Sturmay made 2 really good ones after that.
Yes.
So, and then in the 10th end, both teams play it well. Carrick Martin makes the first tick, misses the second one, which is the opening that Carson Sturmey needs. Gets it so that Brendan Bottcher is facing 3. With his last one, needs piece of the forefoot, and just for fun, puts it full forefoot, maybe a piece of the button even. And he is the Alberta champion. That last end, if you're Carson Sturmey, you can't ask really for more than to have Brendan Bottcher cold draw to the forefoot. That's, if you start the end and tell the team without the hammer that, I think they'll take it.
Yeah, for sure. And, all credit to Bottcher and to those sweepers. They knew what it needed out of his hand and, guided it there quite well.
Yes. And just overall, you saw, if we talk about the body language that we saw in the Manitoba game, it couldn't have been more different in this game. Both teams were calm, confident. They had a sense of the Sturmey team, a couple panicky calls, and Darren Moulding does his Darren Moulding thing where he does panicky calls too. But there wasn't the negativity that we felt, or that I felt certainly in watching that Manitoba game. You got the sense of this was a game of who's going to make the shot, whereas the Manitoba game at times felt like who's going to miss.
Yeah, I agree.
And so just this was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, a really fun game to watch, and I'm glad that we didn't start recording before it was over, because I got to pay attention to a pretty good finish.
Yeah, so congratulations to Brendan Bottcher, 4th trip to the Brier, 3rd Alberta Championship. He, of course, has lost the last 2 Brier finals. First to Gushu, last year, of course, to Kevin Cooey. And, Scott, this field, we'll talk about it when we do our Brier preview. This field is loaded. The women's field is loaded, and the men's field is, like, it's fun if, new teams make it. We get to see different people. But my goodness, we are going to lose good teams in the first round in both. Like, we're going to lose teams that you think could potentially win these events before we get to the championship pool. Yeah,
no, for sure. It's like you say, it is pretty loaded. Have they released the pools yet for the men?
Not yet.
That'll probably come tomorrow.
It'll come in the next couple of days. Yeah.
So people listening to this probably already know.
Yeah,
but it's going to be pretty fun down there in Kingston, Sean. And I don't know if we've mentioned, but we're going to have Game of Stones coverage.
Yeah, extensive coverage from Kingston,
live from Kingston. Yeah, so looking forward to that. We'll talk more about it as the time comes.
Yes, so that'll be a lot of fun. But let's talk real quick, Scott, about the wild card game. Mike McEwen, as we mentioned, he loses, so he is in the wild card game. And we talked about it when we previewed all the provincials of how the wild card berth could get all the way down to Glenn Howard if things broke right for him. And Scott, things broke right for Glenn Howard.
Yes, and they did. It worked out just the way it needed to.
Yeah, 9th rated team on CTRS points could have been passed by Tanner Horgan in Manitoba this week. If Tanner Horgan had, I think, finished 3rd, I think he had to make it into the semifinal game, could have passed Glenn Howard, doesn't, so that spot will fall to the 9 seed on the points. It's crazy. And we'll have Mike McEwen against Glenn Howard in a game that is scheduled, Scott, to have 160 rocks thrown. I'm guessing 158 of them will pick.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch these two teams get used to the ice. We've seen the past 2 years with this wild card game, some pretty terrible games, right? We saw I think Carrie Anderson against whoever she played last year when she lost, and it was just like she had no idea where to put the broom. Anyway, with these two teams, it'll be pretty fun. Oh, I can't believe that side of the ice, but I'm into it. I was rooting for Bottcher mostly because I wanted to see Team Glenn Howard in the opportunity to get to the Brier even. Glenn Howard 50, what is he, 57 now?
56, 57, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, for him to be this good, like Russ stopped playing when he was late 40s, or was he 50 when he won the gold medal, I think?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's going to be a lot of fun too. They're sort of the hometown team, being in Kingston. Right. Glenn Howard's from Eastern Ontario, so that should be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, a lot of fun.
Right. Dave Mather's from Ottawa as well. So I mean, there will be a lot of a local flavor there. And so last year in that wild card game on the women's side, it was Carrie Anderson against Casey Scheidegger, of course. And Casey Scheidegger wins 7-6, a game in which the two skips combined, Scott, to shoot 62%.
Yeah, they had no idea what was going on. It was very entertaining.
Yes, it was. Maybe not for the right reasons, but it was an entertaining game. So we'll look forward to seeing that wild card game. Hopefully the ice is in better shape and that the two teams can pick it up. So that we have an entertaining game, a well-played game between those two teams, and whoever makes it in, it really doesn't matter in terms of strength of field. If field's going to be great, the teams that are qualified are solid all the way around, and whichever team gets that final spot, it's going to be a slugfest in Kingston.
Yeah, no doubt. So that's that. Our fields are set. Yeah. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, or I guess next week, to preview the Scotties.
No, this week.
Oh, right, this week, because it starts on Friday.
It starts, yeah. So this week, the Scotties out there in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, kicking off on Valentine's Day, Friday night. Scott, what better way to celebrate Valentine's Day than by watching Tracy Fleury play Jennifer Jones in Moose Jaw to be Team Wildcard at the 2020 Scotties.
Yeah, to start the Tournament of Hearts on Valentine's Day.
It's a beautiful thing.
Nothing more fitting. And my Valentine's Day date, Sean, will likely be a beer and maybe a pizza while I watch this game. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun on Friday night. So we'll be back later in the week to talk about this. Again, loaded field. This is going to be a lot of fun. Curling Canada, 2 years ago with the Scotties and the new format, didn't really work. And I think it's because the field wasn't great a couple years ago. This year, the new format, this is what I think Curling Canada wanted with the format, just big games all week. This is going to be a lot of fun. So we'll be back later this week to do a full preview of a just loaded Scotties field. And because these fields are so good, Scott, we're not just doing coverage of the Brier from Kingston. We're doing daily coverage of the Scotties from Ottawa, but it'll be daily coverage of the Scotties because there's going to be so much going on, and I am so excited.
Yeah, I've got a few vacation days left, Sean, and I think I'm going to need to use at least one to make sure I can see all the curling and be able to podcast about it every day. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So starting on Friday, February 14th, about a half hour to 45 minutes after the games go off air, off TSN, we'll post a little recap of the day, what we thought, what we saw, and look forward to the next day. So if you have not yet, please do subscribe to the feed on Apple, Google, wherever it is you get your shows, so that you can be along for the ride with us for what should be a fun 3 weeks. 3 weeks?
Yeah, 3 weeks. It'll be good.
Or 4 weeks. The Brier final is 4 weeks today?
It's 4 weeks today.
Yeah, so this is going to be a fun month. So follow along with us. And as I say, we'll be back later in the week to drop our big Scotties preview as we look at all the teams in the field.
Yes. Before we go, though, Sean, let's do some quick hitters of some other things that were going on that might be of interest to our listeners. The English Nationals finished today.
Yes.
And Team Andrew Woolston, it was called Team Woolston all week. It's the same team that won last year with Andy Reid skipping, so it seems like maybe they flipped. But they won. They beat Rob Retchless and our friend, the Professor of Peel. Tough gave up 3 in the 8th, and that put them down 4. They had to try to, manufacture something there in the 9th. Weren't able to do so, only got one. And then we're ran out of stones in the 10th. So tough break there, but good work making the final.
Yep.
Well done.
See
Nicholas Edin and Anna Hasselberg, surprise, surprise, both won Swedish championships.
Shocking.
Yeah, I know. Hold on to your hats, listening to that. And I also wanted to mention the USA Nationals got going this weekend.
Yes.
In Spokane. Only a couple of games under everyone's belt so far, but no surprises. No surprises so far.
No, but definitely follow those along, and I believe we have access in Canada to the feed.
Yes, if you go to tesn.us, that's 12th End Sports Network, there's a link to the USA Curling Nationals live stream. So that's put on by Team USA.
Yeah, so definitely check that out. Some good teams there. Corey Dropkin, Rich Ruohonen, John Schuster, of course, those regular teams that we've seen before on tour. So they're all there. Should be a fun week. And John Schuster and his team, they're gonna have to play well to win.
Yeah, for sure. Rocks Across the Pond did a pretty good preview of the field there last week. Tomorrow night, Sean, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern time. The feature game on TESN will be Corey Dropkin and John Schuster. So if you can stay up late, or if you live on the West Coast, also known as the Best Coast, you'll be able to watch that game. That should be a good one.
Yeah, with the and the finals are going on Saturday as well. So a lot of action out there to follow along. Should be a fun week out there. Good luck to all the teams competing.
Yeah, and just real quick before we go, the mixed doubles also happened for England, and Jonathan lost in the final to the couple or the people with the same name.
Fowler and Fowler.
Fowler. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they lost 8-2 in that final there.
Again,
Anna and Ben Fowler.
Not easy. Making a final at a national event.
No,
so
to go back-to-back finals like that within a week. Well done, Jonathan.
Yeah, a lot of work.
A lot of work. You've earned your rest.
And that's all I have from the world of curling that Curling Zone is currently displaying.
So there you go. So a lot going on. Really a fun time of year here on the podcast and in the world of curling. So we'll be back with you later in the week to keep going with all this great coverage of the Season of Champions. Very much looking forward to it. As I said, please do subscribe to the show, Apple, Google, wherever it is you get your shows. Do the likes, ratings, all that fun stuff. Keep the show going. Let other people know about it. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Game of Stones Pod. Scott's there at Scott Lakes TV, and I'm at Dr. Shawnee Fever. And as always, you can email the show at gameofstonespodcast@gmail.com. So we'll be back with you later in the week. But until then, keep your brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.